I'd like to welcome you all back to the IE427 garage. We kind of left off in the last video where we were working on the rear panels, and they're all in and they're all secure, and I did get all of the silicone sealant cleaned up in the corners and on the edges, so everything's looking good. I just finished up working on the side panels. These are the panels that go in where the cross brace, the X brace, is underneath each of the doors. And you can see I've still got clecos in there because the silicone is still wet and drying. And I've got the same thing happening over here. So the reason that I've got the clecos in there is I don't want to keep reaching over the edge and getting this black silicone right here. Can you see that? Yeah, I think you can just see it. I don't want to continue to get that on my arms and then transfer it either onto the bronze powder-coated chassis or on my clothes or anything else. So to me, it just makes sense once you get those in to just let the silicone dry. Those are the most difficult to get in and not get that silicone all over you. I'm doing it at a comfortable height because I've got this up on the lift, but even if you're doing it on jack stands in your garage, it just makes sense. Just let the silicone dry overnight and then pull the clecos out, run your rivets in. You may have to clean out a couple of holes that aren't drilled perfectly because the silicone is dried and so there's no kind of give in them, but to drill a couple extra holes makes it a lot easier. So anyways, I think what I'm going to move on to today is I have to, one, get the rear wheels and tires back on the car because I'm going to need to roll this off of the lift to get Michael's car up on the lift, hopefully tomorrow. I'm crossing my fingers that I can get this thing picked up. I scheduled an appointment with the upholsterer. So sometime before noon tomorrow, I should be picking up Michael's car, and there's rain in the forecast. So Michael's car may sit in the trailer for a day or two until we've got some clear weather. A couple raindrops on it while I load it into the trailer down at the upholsterers shouldn't be a big deal, but I don't want to get in a whole thing about issues with the upholsterer, so let's just leave it at that. I think what I'm going to work on after I do the wheels and tires in the back is I'm going to come back here on this front driver's side panel. I've got it all drilled. I just haven't put it together yet. So basically I just have to silicone and pop rivet the kick out for the dead pedal in on that panel, and then the car will pretty much be ready to roll off of the 4-post lift here. Now, if I end up keeping Michael's car in the trailer for a couple of days because of weather, then probably what I'll do, since I've now got the Firewall in and I've got the footbox front on, I will probably start running wire. So I'm going to probably take the Ron Francis harness out, and I'm going to start running the harness that goes to the back of the car down to the back of the car, and then I'll run the harness that goes to the front of the car out to the front of the car and leave those in strategic places where I can tie onto them later. I think what I'm also going to do before I put the fuse box, the Ron Francis fuse box in, I think I may pre-wire the trailer converter. For those of you that don't know, Factory 5 is including a trailer light converter now so that you can use a single taillight on each side that does both your taillight, your brake, and your turn signal. And so that has to be wired in somewhere. You can wire it in the back of the car. I think I'm going to choose to wire it in behind the dash. And I'm probably going to wire it in with some weather pack connectors just in case down the road there are some reliability issues with the trailer light converter. In the past, when this hasn't been something that's included with the Factory 5 kit, I've just used 2 relays. That's what we did on Michael's car. So we're running a single taillight on each side of Michael's car, and we've done this before on other cars. In the past, we've also wired the twin lights on each side to act the same way. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to that if I have some time here in the shop. But stay tuned. We will see what we're in for. This is the inside of the panel, everybody. I wanted to show this to you, even though I've mentioned this in a previous video. This is the inside bump out for, I guess what could be considered the dead pedal in the driver's compartment in the footbox. And the reason that I run the rivets from the inside out is because if you're running heat and sound mat, that you want this surface in here to be a little bit smooth, because you're going to have to get it conform inside these small little angled pieces in here. And it's just so much easier if you don't have to contend with the pull side of the rivet, the part that sticks out farther. So I'm going to let this piece set for a while. And then just like the other pieces that we did in the previous video, I'll roll the silicone excess off with my thumb or finger, and then clean the panel up. And this one's not going to go on permanently. I've said this before. I always leave these panels off, the panel on this side and the same panel on the outside of the passenger foot box, because it just makes it's so much easier to get in here and get your, your heat and sound mat, your carpeting. If you have to adjust your throttle pedal once you get the engine installed in the car, it's just way easier. So I leave this panel off until the very end. I'll put this panel on right before we put the body on, after the body's painted, and it just makes it a lot easier to get in there. I've got one of the wheels on. I'm going to grab the other wheel and tire for the other side and get this thing off the jack. But I think that's going to be it for tonight. So I'll probably see you guys tomorrow evening, probably after work, and we'll see what surprises we have in store. I don't know if this one will still be on the lift or whether Michael's car will be up on the lift. So it'll be a surprise for both of us. All right, next day, we are back at it. I have completed this panel to the point where I've got it back on the car. You can see I've got some squeeze out on the silicone here. I'll do the same thing here. I'm just going to take a sharp either single edge razor or a utility knife. I'm just going to cut the silicone there, and then I'm just going to run my finger along it, and that usually rolls whatever excess silicone is on the surface right off. Then I'll just take some all-purpose spray cleaner, and I'll clean up the panel, and it'll just stay on there rather than sitting on the back of the truck. It's probably safer here than it is over there, because a lot of the stuff that's over there is for Michael's car, and it's going to be going onto Michael's car. So that's all done for now. I'm going to leave it well enough alone. What I am working on, I went upstairs and I organized some of the boxes, and I talked to the owner of the 25th anniversary car today, and I said to him, I said, it seems like every time I talk to you, I'm apologizing. And it's true. Today, I didn't have to, but I did. I apologize for not having gone through all of the different parts that are in all the boxes that he dropped off with the car, two and a half months ago? Because that's normally one of the first things I do. I go through all of the boxes, and I recategorize everything in a way that makes sense to me. All the parts on his end have already been accounted for, so all the back orders have been taken care of. I think he ordered this kit, more than a year ago. It's a 25th anniversary car. Now we're in the 27th year of Factory 5. So even if the car, was available into that 25th year, well into that 25th year, it's been a while. So we know we've got all the parts upstairs that he ordered and that he delivered to me. But I like to take all the boxes that are, let's say, electrical, like the Ron Francis chassis harness, the Ford control pack unit, all of the miscellaneous switches like the ignition switch, the headlight switch, all that, and I package them all together. So when I have an electrical part that I need, I just go to that box. Same thing when I'm working on, brakes. I categorize the brakes, front brakes, and rear, and so everything that I need for the front brakes is in the front brakes box, and for the rear brakes as well. It just works for me. And I didn't do that when I got his car because I already had Michael's car deep into what we were doing on that. And it's catching up with me now because now I have a third car here. We've got Jim's Mk4 here that came in for some stuff, and I can't break away and dedicate a whole afternoon or a whole morning to going through all those parts and recategorizing them. So what I've been doing is I've been going into his inventory sheets and actually having to look up what box number they're in and then going to that box. And if that box is on the bottom, then I've got to move, 4 or 5 boxes to get to that box. And it just adds a lot of time and complexity during the build that I just don't like. It's complicated. It adds complications, and I just don't, I don't dig doing that. But I went up there for electrical parts, which is one of the reasons I use that as an example, because I want to start putting the chassis harness in the car. And two things. One of the next things that we're going to be doing, milestone things we're going to be doing, is dropping the engine and the trans in. And before you do that, you want to make sure that you've got most things run through the tunnel, the transmission tunnel of the car, so that you don't have to worry about trying to get a drill or pop rivets or anything like that in there. If you run your chassis harness through there and get it secured, then it's something you don't have to worry about working around later. It's already there. So I'm going to work on doing that. One of those things, though, first that I'm going to have to do is I'm actually going to have to run some heat and sound mat on the inside portion of the Firewall. Sorry for the echo, guys. Now that all the panels are in, it just echoes really bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some excess fat mat that I have upstairs from previous projects, and I'm going to get at least the section from this dash support hoop, or dash support for the hoop, from there over that way, done, because I don't run the rear chassis through the center of the tunnel like Factory 5 suggests. What I end up doing, I'll take you over to the other side, I try to line it up with one of the transmission side tubes. So I'm going to run it down this side because I found running it down the driver's side of the vehicle just works better for me. So what I'm going to do is, rather than drilling the hole up over here, in the center of the transmission tunnel, it's not the center of the transmission tunnel, up, I think you guys know what I mean, on the Firewall, lined up with this side of the transmission, and then my hole will be right up here. So about 10 inches over from the steering column. And like I said, that just seems to work better for me than running it down, willy-nilly in the center. I do the same thing with, like if it's a carbureted car, when we're running the sensor harness that goes through the Firewall for the Ron Francis harness that ends up going to all your gauges, I try to line that up with one of the valleys on the intake manifold so that it'll run right down there, and that's usually the driver's side as well. So you can kind of see a method to the madness here. There's reasons that I kind of lay things out in a particular manner because I think in the end it just makes it easier to, straight line, so it comes out of the Firewall and it goes right across the intake manifold, or it comes out of the back of the Firewall and it runs right down the transmission tunnel where I want it. So I don't end up with all this excess wires and excess loops and everything else. you know, on Michael's car, there was a lot of wires, you know, because we have nearly every option that you could possibly put on a factory 5 car on that car. And we started running out of real estate behind the dash really quickly. And one of those reasons is because the Holley Terminator system has a lot of stuff. And had we chose to put the ECU out in the engine compartment, we probably could have saved some of that clutter behind the dash. But you trade one clutter for another. It's clutter behind the dash, or it's clutter out in the engine compartment. So I'm getting off on a tangent there, but you guys can kind of see what I'm going to do. The other thing is the included trailer light converter that comes with all the new Mk4 kits, but started with the 25th anniversary car, is this unit here. And so I'm going to unpack this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire this in to the Ron Francis harness, and I may even try to use some of the connectors that the actual trailer converter comes with. If I can't, if the leads are too long or I just can't use these, then what I'll end up doing is I will end up getting weather pack connectors, so that if this ever fails, we will be able to just disconnect it with weather pack connectors. We'll put the weather packs onto a new trailer converter and then plug it in and be on our way. So I'm going to wire that in probably into the main portion of the Ron Francis harness. So for those of you that don't know, the main harness is going to be that portion of the harness that has the fuse box, and that all of the other adjoining harnesses plug in too. So the dash harness plugs into the main harness, the front harness plugs into the main harness, and the rear harness plugs into the main harness along with the dash harness. So all of those things are plugging into the main harness. And so I want to wire that into the main harness, and I want to put that thing, I'm hoping, somewhere over by the steering wheel, because that's where the Russ Thompson turn signal switch is going to end up connecting to, which is going to have another weather pack connector that's probably going to plug into this turn signals to this trailer converter. And so I'm just trying to eliminate as much bulk wiring as I can and try to get everything nice and tidy from the very start. So I don't know how much of that I can show you guys, because it's just going to be, you know, monotonous wiring. But I want to get some of these harnesses run before I start back on Michael's car. Now, I will tell you, I did pick his car up this morning. It's here at the shop. I managed to get it in the shop, and I was, you know, I'm dodging raindrops, so I didn't want to move everything around, move one car off the lift and all that, and have the chance of getting the interior of Michael's car wet. So I'm not going to show you that until probably the next video. I'm going to try to keep that in its own video and keep all the stuff for Pauline, the 25th anniversary, in its own video. So I'm kind of doing these simultaneously right now, so hang with me. So I'm going to unpack this stuff, and then probably the next thing you'll see is either me wiring in this trailer converter to the main harness, or, you know, installing fat mat on the Firewall. All right, 2 days later. I haven't been filming in the shop because honestly I've only been out here a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes each night. So I'm going to catch up. I did both. I went ahead and I ran fat mat on the Firewall. So I've got fat mat across the entire inside of the fat mat, both on the back portion and on the lower portion, because remember, the Firewall forward projects out into the engine bay and then up. So this bottom area here is just that 060 aluminum thickness right there. So we add a little bit of fat mat to that. It gives us a little bit of heat and thermal protection. Probably not something you have to do, but I do it anyways. And then I went ahead and I wired in the trailer converter. And what I did is I wired it in so that it is removable. So I put weather pack connectors on each side. I've got a weather pack here that is a 4-pin that takes care of the wires into the converter, which are the brake, the right and left turn, and the tail light. And then out of the other side, we have the 3 wires where it takes the turn and brake out for the right, the turn and brake out for the left, and the tail lights out. I haven't done anything with the grounds yet. I'm going to basically tie both of the grounds together, and they're going to land on a ground stud. I don't know whether I'm going to put a ground stud here or whether I'm going to put a ground stud over here. I'm leaning towards putting it over here because the Ron Francis harness has a very short pigtail on the ground. In the Factory 5 instructions, or the Ron Francis instructions, it basically wants you to just drill a hole, not drill a hole, put a self-tapping screw down in here on one of the 3/4 inch frame tubes. I'm not comfortable with that because that's a difficult spot to get to because it's going to be underneath the master cylinders. So you can't get to it from up here through the access panel. And even if you have the dash off, it's difficult to get in through here because you've got all of the stuff that's going to be running through that opening behind the dash. So I'm going to, if I have to, I'll extend it to reach to here, or I'll mount it over there, because if I mount it over there, I can not only get all of the chassis harness grounds tied to that, I can also get the grounds for the seat heaters, I can get the grounds for the actual heater itself, and anything else that we're going to have behind the dash can ground there. I think the Ford control pack wants a direct ground to the battery. It's been a while since I did a Coyote. I haven't even breezed through the Ford Racing instructions for the Gen 3 Coyote yet, so I'll know better once I get to that point. But if it requires a ground behind the dash, then I'll put it back here on that same stud. So I don't know. One of those 2 spots is where it's going. All right. So here's what we're doing with the rear harness. We've got the rear harness going through the fat mat, the heat and sound mat, on the Firewall. And then I've got it going down the tunnel. I got to be careful with that. Ugh. I've got it going down the tunnel, and I've just got it tie wrapped in place for now. So I got a tie wrap there. I've got a tie wrap there, and I've got it sent to the back of the car. Where once I get the car up in the air again, I'll strap everything in the back. And then out of the front of the Firewall, I've got it right here. It just comes out of the Firewall and straight down the tunnel the way I wanted it. So that part of it's done. Little tip on drilling through fat mat, and if you notice, I've got all the fat mat on. But what I do is I take a 2-inch hole saw, and with my pilot hole, my 1/4 inch pilot hole in the center, I actually run the 2-inch hole saw from this side in reverse, just to the point where I cut through the fat mat. Then I take my 1.25 inch hole saw, which is the size that you need for this particular grommet. I start it from this side, and I run it until it's about halfway through the panel. Now in 040, it's much more difficult to gauge when you're halfway through it. But with the 060, it's a little bit easier. So basically, you just want to break the surface with the hole saw so that when you turn and you start drilling it from this side, you don't have so many shards of metal around the outside that push into the inside portion of the car. It's a lot easier to clean up, and you can clean it up one of 2 ways. You can take a utility knife, like a Stanley knife or one of those, with a retractable blade, and you can go around the outside and go around the inside with the blade. It actually will clean quite a bit of it up, because the aluminum, even though it's 6061, is still kind of soft. Or you can take a file. I use a triangular file. This is the one I use right here. And the reason I like this versus a round file is most of the round files that you find out there aren't fine enough, meaning they're a much coarser tooth. And so sometimes you have trouble with them catching, and then especially with powder coated panels, what you'll find is it'll slip. You'll push the tip of this right into the panel and scratch your panel. So with much finer teeth on the file, it just works out better for me. And then you'll file it from both sides until it's nice and smooth. So that's the rear harness, and I've got it to the back of the car. I'll come back to that in just a second. I've also run the front harness. So this is the harness that runs up to all the front lights. So the headlights, the turn signals, and slash marker lights. And then the fan for the radiator cooling fan is also included in this harness. So that I've just got through the factory supplied punched hole in the front of the footbox, which is that one right there. That's the one you want, not this one. This one's actually for a cable style clutch. And so if this panel is pop riveted in place and you try to run that grommet in here, it does not want to work. So take it from me, run your wires through here. We'll end up probably running our hoses for our master cylinders through this hole. I'll take the block off plate that's provided, I'll punch 3 holes in it, I'll put grommets, and then we'll run it through here. But I have the front harness just tie wrapped in place in a couple of spots down the frame rail, and then I've got the big bundle here. We are going to wait, and we're going to run these wires across the bottom of the radiator, underneath the nose aluminum. I don't like running it across here because then it's visible from the engine compartment. There's already going to be enough wires under this hood with the Coyote, the control pack, the Coyote mega fuse, and everything else that's going on over in this corner here. I don't want any more wires than I absolutely have to. So I'm doing everything I can to hide the stuff along the outside. So these, once the radiator is in, will run across the bottom of the radiator over to the other side. We're also going to relocate the horn. The horn is supposed to be mounted right here. If you're doing the kit for you the first time, just know, you send a bolt through this way, you're not going to be able to get your radiator aluminum side on there with any bolt head or any nut on this other side. So be careful where you attach your bracket for your horn. I'm going to relocate the horn to here. This is generally where we mount it. I'm probably going to mount it down a little farther on this tube because we want to clear all our power steering hoses. And then I'm going to see if I can talk the owner of the car into using the bad boy horn, which is the horn that we use a lot for these cars. It's loud. It sounds like an English sports car, which is what the Cobra is based on. And it's simple to wire. It's a compressor and air horn all in one. There's no hoses. There's no nothing. It's a small compact unit and they work awesome. So I'm going to see if we can put that horn on this car. The horns that are provided sound like a 1990s Crown Victoria, and this is not a Crown Victoria. So that's what we're going to do on the horns. In the back of the car, what we've done is we have just pulled everything to its appropriate side. So here we've got the driver's side taillights, and over here we've got the passenger side taillights. And if you notice, the purple wire for the brake lights are suspiciously not in here. We've relocated that. And I'll show you where we relocated it in the front. But in the back, what we've done on both sides, both the driver's side and the passenger side, there are 2 separate purple wires for the brake lights. And what we did is we reran them to come up where the license plate light is going to come through the floor. We're going to drill a hole right about here. And we're going to bring this up through and run across to the hinge. And then it's going to go and loop into our trunk deck lid for the tail license plate light. But we will have these 2 purple wires independent to the back of the car if we want to add like a trunk light or some other type of electronics in the back of a car, in the back of this car. So for instance, if you wanted to run a backup camera and you needed power for the backup camera, we've already got a ground. It's right here. This will be our 12 volts for whatever it is that we're going to run. I think we may put lights in the trunk, so when the trunk opens, the lights turn on. We'll run that purple wire or one of those purple wires through a tilt activated switch, and then that'll activate the lights. The other side of that purple wire actually go on the dash or behind the dash. And those are right here, and you can see they are indeed two independent wires that go into a single weather pack connector. You can see the insulator is still on this, but we can cut these loose and have two independent purple wires to the back of the car. The other wires that we are not using are the VSS wires. So the vehicle speed sensor wires that are going to the transmission will not be used. So that connector has been cut off. That is in the harness about here. And we have capped those off on that side. We have left them on this side. They are, let's see, the gray and the green wires right here. So we can also use those gray and green wires for anything in the future. Anything that we want to put in the transmission tunnel, for instance. So again, if you wanted to add some interior lights or something on the sides of the tunnel, those could be used for that. So I think that's where we're going to end this. Oh, that was a great song. That was a song by Meatloaf. Rest in peace, brother. That's it. That's all we got for you this time. We have got a lot of stuff going on in the shop right now. We have got about 2 more days before the 25th anniversary car has to come off the lift. I got notification from Jeff Miller. I talked to him just the other day, and we are about 2 weeks out from him shooting color onto Michael's car. From that, I know how much time I have before I'll be picking up the body out at Jeff's shop. So the pressure's on. I've got to get this one as complete as I can get it in the next 2 days. That means I'm going to be working on this chassis harness, getting it all strapped into place so it'll be easier to move the car. I have some parts for the emergency brake system. We got 2 pulleys from McMaster Car. We're going to try to use those pulleys to put the cables in a better position rather than running them under the chassis and get a good pull. I might have to modify the handle a little bit, but we'll see. I don't think that's going to happen until after we shoot the next video for Michael's car. So you guys are just going to have to hang on that. But Michael's car will be going back on the lift, and we will try to finish up as much as we can on the 25th anniversary car in the next 2 days. I'd like to thank you all for watching. We appreciate every view. If you're enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe. We'll see you guys all next time. Have a great day.